partnership is important to us for Invest India and to the Agni program specifically is that we look at innovation as a completely comprehensive activity, and we feel incubators in this activity are the linchpins, the sheet anchors on the ground who will actually be our eyes and ears on the ground for startups and innovators to actually learn about what is happening. From Delhi, sometimes you feel like you're doing all the great things here, but nobody on the ground really seems to know what's happening. So we want that linkage with all the incubators via ISBA and your guidance to go to the ground. I will also take you through what we've been doing on CSR and what the Agni initiative is, and Shubhangi will delve deeper into it and maybe talk about a few success stories. But at the onset, I really want to say that we are very grateful for this partnership. And, we're very thankful to you and Dr. Suresh as well for, talking to us and making this happen. So thank you so much. And maybe now I can share my screen and just go through a few slides that we have. Shubhangi, if you'd let me know when you see my... a second. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's visible.
All right, just putting it on. I'm not sure if it's in the presentation mode yet. Should be now?
Now it is. Now it is.
Thank you so much. So Invest India is the National Investment Promotion and Facilitation Agency of the Government of India. It has been set up under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, and it's been operational for about, I think, 7-8 years now, but quite actively working to support Make in India in the last 5 years or so. We basically focus on FDI to support development of the country, socio-economic development of the country, and the Make in India initiative is sort of where we have a lot of our people focused on. That is the primary purpose of this organization. Obviously, because of FDI, we are in touch with more than 150 countries across the world with a focus on helping them come into India, help set up their companies within all the states and union territories. So our network of operations actually ranges from the Himalayas to the Indian Ocean in the south and east to west completely. We have special focus areas for the Northeast, for areas that are not served so well by the economic paradigm that we've been seeing in the last few decades. We are highly awarded. Recently also won the UNCTAD award, which is supposed to be the Oscars of investment promotion. And we have quite a dedicated team of 200 plus now that answers business queries from around the world across all major sectors. So all the Make in India sectors are covered by us. And we have an engagement going from governments to companies to even implementers on the ground. So it's a fairly complex organization that we've been able to build up in the last few years. But apart from investment promotion, we also focus on a lot of other initiatives. So we have grown in the last few years to go into innovation via Startup India and Agni, which we'll be talking about a little later also. This is under the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor. We also support the Prime Minister's Science, Technology and Innovation Advisory Council, which is the apex body for all science and technology matters in the country. We have something called the India Investment Grid, which is basically a repository of all infrastructure projects that industry can support in the country. So this is something that is a pan-India level initiative of the government, and we are executing this. Apart from this, we have a lot of different desks that work with the Defense Research and Development Organization. We have what is called the Project Monitoring Group. So this used to be within the Cabinet Secretariat PMO, and now we are executing it to look at large-term infrastructure projects and big buck items that need constant approvals, constant facilitation on the ground, and a team within Invest India actually looks at it. Apart from that, we do focus on specific sectors. So for instance, we have a desk focused on food processing, for instance, or agriculture. So it's all to say that we are quite fairly spread out in how we function, and we've moved beyond our FDI only function to innovation, to actually making execution happen on the ground. So the PM Stack is a major component of how we engage with the innovation ecosystem. It is a body, like I said, at the apex of all the science, technology, and innovation in the country. It is headed by the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India, Dr. K. Vijay Raghavan. And the Agni mission that we'll be talking about forms part of this PM Stack. PM Stack focuses on national missions in emerging technology areas, and they have a very deep project plan where they focus from the ministry downwards into how the project will be implemented on the ground by incubators, startups, and research organizations in the country. And as listed on this slide, there are a few of the areas that they're focusing on. Agni is one of the missions. It was realized that a lot of research that happens in the country doesn't get commercialized properly, and Agni was supposed to look at this. So 3 years ago, we started this program, and we've been looking at working with startups to advance their solutions to commercializations, as well as public R&D institutions. So you have all the academic institutions and R&D institutions in the country that we help figure out how to take their innovations to market. So the Agni mission stands for Accelerating Growth of New India's Innovations. Like I said, it was started 3 years ago, and we've gone through various permutations and combinations to figure out what is the best service that we can offer to the ecosystem. We primarily work with startups and public R&D, like I mentioned, but we do have networks ranging into MSMEs, into common service centers, and large number of incubators that we engage with. The model that we follow is fairly straightforward. We have a scouting division that looks at looking at getting the best technologies that exist in the country to meet various use cases that have been provided to us by corporates or government partners. Then we have a de-risking or scaling component. The team over there basically focuses on getting licensing, manufacturing agreements, or if startups or technologies need any kind of incubation, acceleration support, or if it's funding, for instance. We are not a funding agency ourselves, but we are connected to a lot of VCs and various different funding programs with the Government of India, and we form a part of the channel to getting them that funding wherever possible. And then finally, the third part of our team is looking at commercialization or adoptions. So they focus primarily on government and corporate partners, figuring out where technology and innovation can play a role, getting those use cases to the team and figuring out what are the best startups or the best technologies being developed in the country that can meet that need. So over the last 3 years, I think we've interacted with more than 2,000 innovations with maybe 600, 700 plus LOIs, which is what we count as a program metric, which is when a corporate or any sort of partner connects with the startup or a technology and says that we have interest in piloting this or taking this forward in some way. So we've done fairly well in that metric as well. We have a website, agni.gov.in. This is Agni with 2 I's, where startups can go and they can put up their innovation. An expert team from from our team actually looks at it, and we figure out if it makes sense to advance it right now, straight to adoption, or to send it out to de-risking and any potential connects in the scaling ecosystem. So this happens on the portal itself. It's completely paperless. People will be in touch with your team. It's a very friendly, corporate-friendly practice, and we try to take them on then for multiple years till they actually reach the market in a feasible manner. So in the last 3 years, like I mentioned, we've done over 2,000 applications with maybe 400, 500, which we work on in a very, very inclusive and very hands-on manner on a regular basis. Like I mentioned, the team is divided into 3 functions and 3 sub-teams, where the innovation or the sourcing side focuses on all of these different innovation hubs that we mentioned on the side. The de-risking aspect, like I mentioned, from financial to MSMEs and manufacturing, is basically making sure that the value of death can be looked at by the startups and they can traverse it in a much better manner. So there's support in that aspect. And then finally, the main purpose of the program, to which we are all gearing towards, is adoption on the side. So this is what Agni is, and we'll be talking a little bit more about it later. Sahyog. So before I jump to CSR properly, Sahyog is important to be introduced. Sahyog is our social impact initiative at Invest India. So this is a bunch of us. It's a voluntary team that we've set up, and the idea was to keep Invest India socially relevant, to make sure we don't get lost in the big numbers of the countries and the FDI and Make in India, but to actually have impact on the ground. So we do very simple things like blood donation drives, using all the waste paper, and we are a 200, 250 plus team, so we do generate a lot of waste paper, unfortunately. So we try to recycle that, make it useful for children in rural schools, helping companies figure out where they can actually invest their CSR money, like infrastructure development in village schools again. So this is a broad overview of some of the activities we did. Once we were doing this, we realized that there's a big scope for CSR in India. And a lot of these foreign companies that we interact with don't really know where to go, what projects to do. And there's a lack of information on that front, especially when the company is sort of new, 3 to 5 years into India. They've set up operations, and then suddenly they realize this is, CSR is something that they have to do. And they had no way to really figure out what were good organizations versus organizations that were just, taking advantage of their lack of knowledge. So we decided to jump in, and we thought we'd create a repository of projects that investors, companies, global companies could look at and invest in from a CSR perspective. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, we have the India Investment Grid, which is a national repository of all infrastructure projects. So we work with the team that looks at IIG to come up with a repository on the IIG for CSR projects. So while the process started, we focused on all the various, the SDGs and the areas mentioned, the 10 areas mentioned in Schedule 7. So we reached out across the ecosystem, across states, to come up with projects that could be added. Obviously, working with Agni, working with the innovation ecosystem, we realized that incubators can also be funded by this. And around the same time, this was about a year and a half, 2 years ago almost at this point, the definition for incubators and who could be funded was also expanded. So we decided that this was a great opportunity. And we do believe that apart from doing things that seem to be what CSR is worth, so sort of the very visible poverty alleviation and to health and wellness, we also believe that if you do add money and your funding and resources into projects where local problems are being done, where employment guarantee can happen in a longer term period, where innovations can be pulled in, that would be much more sustainable for the country and for just how a company's money is being used. So that's how the incubator focus became a major part of our CSR policy. Like I mentioned, the CSR repository on IIG now has close to 800 projects from 82 districts. A large part of this, 100 plus portfolio, is from incubators, ranging from the IITs to some Atal incubation centers, and across the country, from the northeast to the south. So we are trying to strengthen this. We are trying to obviously create pathways where companies do come in and fund these projects. This is still a work in progress. So we launched it, and then COVID-19 hit. And we were kind of lost in the middle where, we were doing some COVID-19 stuff from all across the team. So we were focused on making businesses survive in sort of the early 3-4 months of the pandemic when people didn't know what was going on, making sure businesses were opening up. We were also focused on a lot of CSR and donations. So this sort of took a backseat at that point. However, we've been at it since then, and we've done a couple of different things to buttress it further. So we've done roundtables with law firms to figure out, because we were getting a lot of FAQs on how incubators could be funded. We actually came up with a roundtable and FAQ booklet, which we released a few weeks back, which deals with some of the common questions that come in on how we can, fund incubation centers and what are things that are covered and not covered. And obviously, then the rules changed, and I'm very curious to learn from Dr. Rajput how that has been that is going to affect the incubator process and the stuff that we've done. And we obviously look to upgrading that, doing more events with corporates to make them aware of the opportunities that lie on this portal and connecting them to the right opportunities. And obviously, just I mentioned COVID, so just to give you a sense of how much this has changed, we came up with a couple of reports during COVID as well. We saw that we were able to channelize about 160 crores of funding to various state and central relief funds. We were able to do almost 11 lakh pieces of essential equipment, PPEs, sanitizers, food articles to organizations that needed it. So we did see a trend also of companies moving towards research, actually funding research organizations, doing testing kits and things like that. So we want to ride that wave and make sure that incubators actually get funding and we can get CSR into the network in a big way. We look forward to your support for actually taking it forward. So this is it from me right now. Happy to answer questions at the end. And we'll be talking a little bit more about the Agni initiative when Shubhangi comes on later in the program. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Siddharth. So should we hold on the questions until Dr. Divya finishes and Shubhangi finishes, so that collectively all three could take the questions? Would that be okay?
Yes, definitely, Dr. Bala.
Okay. Dr. Divya, in fact, she has multiple hats. We have a very long association with her from ISBA, and currently she is the India lead of Texas Global, UT Austin, and director ICSRB. She is also director in Association of Women in Business. So she's a treasurer and co-founder in SBPA. She's such a versatile person. On one side, she was part of the think tank, as I mentioned, in the CSR policy, and she trained several administrators during her stint in IACA. Earlier, she was also instrumental in setting up some good B schools in Delhi region, and she was instrumental in facilitating a lot of initial activities at IIM Lucknow's incubation center. And I'm aware recently she was awarded a PhD under machine learning. I wonder how one can have such a versatile profile. So Dr. Divya, we are eagerly looking to hear from you on this CSR, and thanks for readily agreeing to deliver this session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bala. I mean, I think it's a humbling introduction every time you get that. And I'm sure my co-panelists would agree with that. Only thing is, it takes you to be really crazy. And, every time I think all my incubator managers and heads and CEOs would agree that, what we preach our entrepreneurs is to be focused. However, with me, I mean, I just kept taking, whatever life brought to me. So here I am doing, what I do. So it was interesting journey. Yes, you're right, Dr. Bala, because, I was, I would say, at the right place at the right time. And for a very specific reason, I mostly choose to work with early stage organizations. And the time I joined IICA was early stage, because that very year, 2012, IICA was, conceived, rather inaugurated by our, then Prime Minister. And then the Companies Act 2013 was a game changer. Not only it brought a lot of compliance in, but I think India became the first country to legislate CSR. And we were, going around the country talking and convincing the, corporate wise. I mean, it's okay to give some money out of their profits, and they were like, why don't you just simply add it to our taxes, Why do you actually want us to do the execution bit of it? So it was quite a journey, as I said, but, there was one very specific thing with incubation. And the reason I take so much pride is because, I kept pushing it back to the draft policy again and again. So I had my first, stint of incubation when I was heading a B school. I took my first training program at IIT Bombay, I think in 2010. That's how I got to know more about incubation, and I got more excited, and I said, wow, this is some great piece of work, these incubators could be doing. So when, there was this opportunity of creating a social development change in the country, I thought, why don't, the incubators be a part of it? I mean, it's so simple, incubators are that agency or that institutional mechanism They are already funded, they already support innovation. And at the same time, we as a country cannot keep, only depending on a grant mode. We would actually need some kind of innovations and some kind of innovative, solutions to drive even the socio-economic change. So every time, out of the draft policy, when incubators came out, I used to push that in. And I would convince my DG, why is it so important? And then go on, convince the joint secretary, the additional secretary, and tell them, sir, this will be a game changer. Now, let's do, two things quickly today. And I know there have been, amendments, and that's what we've been dealing with a lot of corporate and PSUs right now. But I will only restrict to the implementation part of it because, our incubators are not only the beneficiaries, but, organizations like ISBA and a couple of others could actually be also the implementation agency for these CSR rules. So one, I'll quickly, run you through what you could be looking at when it comes to, working with the corporate or the PSUs, because there are going to be, it's now moved, from comply. It's become very heavy on compliance for them now. So let's just quickly understand, what is that you could be going to them so that, you understand their perspective. And at the same time, what is going to be required from you as an agency, or, so that you could fulfill in and just go to them and say, hey, let's do some good work together. So, but towards the end of it, only thing I want to tell you is, please remember you're fighting with, or I won't say fighting, or you're trying to actually get a piece of, piece of the pie, as I would say, So, CSR fund is actually even much lesser than, the budget for any of the ministries of the government of India. The only reason it makes it so very important is because, there are these larger corporate, which are managing it, who really understand the importance of execution, who really understand how innovation could drive the country. That's how I see, this little piece of money, So let's quickly, let me quickly run you through this presentation, and I really hope you will find it useful. And then, yes, happy to take questions towards the end of it. Is it okay if I keep my video off for some time? Okay, yes, thank you, Dr. Bala, for introducing me. Let's quickly see a little on the legislation bit of it. So there is one little section called Section 135, which talks everything about CSR. And as I said, India is the first country to legislate CSR, which makes it a little tough, but a little different as well. This is a specific, evolution of CSR in India. So it started with, just like any other country, where corporate actually has to make a lot of profits for their shareholders. Eventually, it started, there were a couple of, instances, and we know of the Tatas and we know of a couple of others who started doing some philanthropy. So, and again, there are so many others who do philanthropy, not just the Tatas, but then even individuals do philanthropy. Thereafter, it started, connecting to the community development, right? Thereafter, it became a matter of, good corporate citizenship. So I'm sure some of you are aware of the NVGs, which is the National Voluntary Guidelines on Responsible Business. So NVGs was the first document in a very little thin book, which was released by then President Dr. Pratibha Devi Patil in 2008. And, that was the first step towards, good corporate citizenship. And especially it started with those corporations or PSUs, where there was a lot of rehabilitation which happened due to development projects. And it was realized, that those communities actually, or the tribal communities or others, do not get anything out of it. So, they're mostly not skilled. They can't get a job there. Nothing could happen. So what could work for them? Thereafter, when, so the last Companies Act we had was in 1956. And thereafter, when the next Companies Act, came in, which was in 2012, we actually hit on the compliance. So Section 135 is actually the compliance bit of it, right? And we enacted the Companies Bill. I mean, first it became a bill, then became a policy, and now it's a Companies Act. So all the companies which are now registered actually get registered under the Companies Act 2013. That's where the CSR finds a little, few pages. That's how, the government has seen CSR. So this is, and again, I will be happy to share this presentation with all of you. So you would realize, what all goes behind all this kind of, initiatives, which and Ministry of Corporate Affairs has been a regulatory ministry. So, this has mostly been the work of Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and some of it, of course, coming from the Department of Public Enterprises also. So, they first released the DPE guidelines in 2010, which, allowed the PSUs to go on and start doing some CSR work. Now, as what we stand today, and rather I would say a step a step behind. So SEBI mandated the, BRR for top 1,000 companies. That happened in 2019. And as on today, the amendments have come, and this time the amendments have actually, made it very strongly hitting on the compliance bit of it. So, there's a lot of pressure on the corporate and PSUs. And if you would imagine, it just came out on 22nd of January 2021, and it is applicable right from 23rd January 2021. So, they have actually practically under 3 months to start the implementation work of it. Our current status is too much aligned to, SDGs. So the reason for putting this slide is so that, you as well as also start, aligning your projects with SDGs. So in case you're looking for CSR funds, you may actually, start looking to align your work with SDGs as well. Let's look at, these principles, quick principles of CSR. So there are these provisions and rules, which have been effective from 1st April 2014. It's called Section 135. It gives you a lot of details in 135(1). It also talks about, the activities which can be covered under Schedule 7. And just like we heard, I mean, earlier there were just 10 items, now there are 12. You may go to the MCA website and you can just spot, Schedule 7. There are some eligible companies to form a CSR committee. I'll just come to that, who all needs to have a CSR committee. Then there have to be, the policies which need to be framed and approved by the board. Then board to give preference to local area, which has always been important. So that's why when a lot of incubators reach out to me, I tell them that why don't you look at, corporations in your area? I mean, they'll prefer that. Unless, you have some alumni pass out from your, institution who would, who's now the CMD of a PSU and actually wants to, do something great for his or her institution. So that's another, possibility. But then now they have to, also disclose the reasons for not spending CSR amount. And this has changed a bit. I'll come to that now also. Earlier, there was, a criminal penalty of 25 lakhs, for non-disclosure. Now that has moved to civil penalty, and that's, a percentage of the amount they haven't spent, or the amount they had to be spending, and if they've not disclosed it. This is the simplest, representation of Section 135. Which says that, every company, be it public or private, if it has a net worth of, 500 crores or more, turnover of 1,000 crores or more, net profit of 5 crores or more, during any financial year, shall constitute a corporate social responsibility committee of the board consisting of minimum 3 directors, out of which at least 1 director shall be an independent director. It says that the board's report shall also disclose the composition of the CSR committee. So a quick tip for all of you incubators, whenever you're wanting to raise funding from a XYZ corporate or PSU, this is all given in public domain. It has to be disclosed on their website. Please go and check it before you start applying to them, right? So it's absolutely given. They have to also disclose, okay, let's look at, what the CSR committee does. So the CSR committee actually formulates a CSR policy and recommends it to the board. They also recommend the activities and the amount of expenditure to be incurred, and then they help monitor the CSR policy. The board forms a CSR committee, and they also have to disclose the contents and place it on the company's website. This is what I meant. You can absolutely go and read about it, right? So top companies, all of them. By the way, there are 12 lakh companies, 12 lakh active companies in India as of now. But still, there are some 20,000 of them which fall under the CSR ambit, and we'll just quickly see that also. So, the board has to also ensure implementation of CSR activities. So, the game changer was actually involving the board to do it. So it no longer, and it was given as much priority as, a CFO function. And now, in fact, in the new amendment, the CFO is also answerable if the money is not being spent. So, these are some of the, reasons why this, makes it all the way more important even for the company. This we've seen, so they have to give preference to local areas. And then, it is actually 2% of the average net profits during preceding 3 financial years. So, that's a typical, money amount which they have to spend. Like just yesterday, we were doing a program for the Indian oil refineries, and their average CSR spend is about 580 crores. So, when we say average, it is actually average of the 3 preceding financial years. And then they also, disclose specific reasons for not spending the CSR amount, which is, I'm sure which nobody wants to do. So that's what makes it, a little more tough for the companies. Again, in a gist, we just saw the responsibilities of the CSR committee and the board. Now, what is the method of implementation? So please understand this carefully. It's not that, they don't want to give to an incubator, or they're, not wanting to give to an incubator, but they can do it directly as well. So, the just example which I gave you yesterday, the, Indian oil refineries, they spend it themselves. They have their own team which spends it, So the company can absolutely, spend the money directly. Company can also, so they can absolutely form a, trust, society, or Section 8 company. They can also give to, other registered trust, society, or Section 8 companies with, a 3-year track record in similar programs or projects. They can also give the money, to other registered trust, society, Section 8 company, which have been established by central or state government, or any entity established under an act of the parliament or state legislature. So, this is what has now brought a lot of, I would say, premium institutions of under this ambit. So, and of course, they can spend money also in collaboration with other companies. This is, a quick snapshot of the profile of companies which are liable for CSR based on their reporting. So, if you would see, the number has been growing, which makes me believe, that yes, our companies are doing something good, that, their profits has been increasing and they come into the CSR ambit. So, it's also, I think, a great reflection of the number of companies growing who have to, spend their CSR money. And as on, when you see 2017-18, this is about, 21,000 companies. These are, the percentage of companies who are liable for CSR and reporting. At the same time, there is a percent of companies who are liable for CSR but not reporting. So, they haven't been reporting yet. So, this could also be a great target segment. They're not reporting, which means most likely they're not even spending. I mean, if you would be spending, why would you not be reporting? These are, some of the figures where they should have been spending, but they haven't been spending. So, you can absolutely look at the table and get a hang of, it's been about averagely about, except for 15-16, where it was, they spent about 85% money. And I'm told that in the current financial year, I mean, post-COVID has further gone down. So, a lot of implementation hassles have come up, and, the expenses this year has been very minimal. So it's averagely, as you can see, about 60-65% of the funding spent. Rest of the money is still lying unspent. Now, these are some of the companies, who have been reporting positive CSR expenditure, means they've actually been, also overspending. So they've been overspending on their projects. And also, these are, as you can see, figures on 31st March 2019. So a couple of them who have, spent zero amount, but then some of them who've actually spent little lesser CSR money, which is, as you can see, 3,000 companies have spent lesser. There are a few who've spent actually equal to, their prescribed amount, which is 992 number. I'm talking about the last financial year, 2017-18, as reported here. Then there are some, and this number is so promising. There are 4,000 companies who, actually spend more money than their CSR prescribed amounts. So, eventually over years, as you would see, companies have started giving it more importance. And that, I think, makes us believe that there's still hope for everybody else too. That's an average spend of, the non-PSU versus the PSU spend. So, PSUs are any day spending, better than what the non-PSU have been spending. So, it's been on an average, 9.40, which is, I would say, if you see the numbers, about 10 times of what, the non-PSU is spending. Now, these are some of the reasons, which have been reported not spending or underspending the CSR prescribed amount. And, it actually ranges from, that they could not find a suitable project, they could not find a good, implementation partner, they did not have prior experience, there was a, delay in the implementation plan, because, most of the PSUs, that's what they tell us, that they go by the tendering system, So that's what they mostly say, that, it takes us time, as simple as that. So now, the new amendments which have come actually allow them the year of, it has restricted the number of years of the projects to 3 years, but it allows them an extra 1 year to set up that project. So it's 1 + 3 years now, according to the new amendments. So, why I'm showing you all these figures is so that you understand that, why do these amendments come up and how do they impact, So all this has been, analyzed, and that's why these amendments have come up the way they have come up this time. Also, this is, the various modes of spending the CSR funds. So, the societies, by the societies, by the Section 8 companies, then directly by the company. And as you can see, a lot of money, so 34% has actually been spent by the company directly. Then, just 2% has actually been given to, external agencies. So, which have been set up under some special act of parliament or the state legislature. And then, about 43% has actually been spent by other implementation agencies. So these are, the NGOs, what we commonly call the NGOs, or some project management companies and so on. So, the major chunk is actually spent by these agencies. So the money given by these corporates is actually given to the implementation agency and they spend it, right? Okay, now this is my favorite slide, and every time, I wanted to see the number of, the percentage of money which goes to our incubator increase, but it did not. So when I was still at IISc and I was part of the National CSR Awards and we were, evaluating applications, I was the one who used to, jump up and say, oh, acha, incubator ko bhi paisa diya hai inhone. Acha, higher education mein diya hai, but it seems, incubators ko nahi diya hai. So, because initially, as you would have remembered, when the first rules came, it allowed only money to be given to the technology incubators within academic institutions, right? And a number of times, that's what companies used to tell us. So, I had actually pushed a couple of these projects that time because, you all know Praveen Roy ji in DST. So, Praveen ji used to refer to me to some people who would actually be interested to raise CSR funding. And then once they had identified a donor, I would speak to them and convince them, how they can give that money to that particular incubator. So the IMAI and then ISD. So a couple of these, including, helping the IIM Lucknow or even IIT Delhi for that matter, So there have started showing up, but it did not, of course, happen in a big way and, took its own sweet time. And because a lot of corporate actually told us we don't understand what these incubators do. So, because it's always easy, to give money for promoting education. It's easy to give money also for rural development. It's also very easy to give money, for health, eradicating hunger, poverty, and malnutrition. I don't know why would they not give money to incubators, but I think it was both sides. So, we failed to, I would say, so when I say we, I would say the community, and I am a part of the community. So, we actually failed to convince them why they should be giving more money to, technology incubators. But that's how it is. So I also remember, when Startup India was founded, so into top 30 corporate, and the moment, a letter goes, so they start writing back to us, and I got a, email from IBM, all of others, and they were like, now, we have to start investing in incubators. So we are clueless, and that's how it was. So I don't know what happened about it because, after I left IISc, of course, I started to lose track. But the only job I did was, make sure that a couple of other organizations start getting, their pie in that. These are some other contributions which have gone to the designated government funds. So, as per the filings which have been received, so that's, just 2,900 crores, which has gone to some other funds. That's a state-wise distribution. And, because most of the corporate, and this is something, which will help you understand why corporate in Maharashtra spend more of Maharashtra. Because if you see the statistics, maximum number of corporate are registered in Maharashtra, followed by Karnataka. I mean, there's no brainer in that, it's such a simple thing to understand. So that's why, because they have to spend money in their local vicinity. So that's how it is, so. And the least, everybody knows, there are least number of corporate or PSUs. So there are handful of PSUs in the Northeast. And that's why, they don't get a bigger share. We talked about it, so they haven't found suitable implementation partners. They haven't also, been able to sort the technical and procedural situations or issues. So, these are some of the challenges with the corporate report. Let's look at quickly now, I know I've taken a lot of time, but quickly look at, the status of our incubators and where do we stand actually. So as you see in the, table above, so that is where, the The seventh point in the CSR thematic areas, which is called the Schedule 7, 135, it listed all the activities, all the 10 activities which could, come under the CSR purview. So earlier, only the technology incubator academic institutions were allowed. Whereas if you see, activity 9 now, it's been broadened, and I would, actually like to thank Invest India team for doing that, because I know they had actually pushed it very, sent out so many letters to our secretary, and then we had a lot of brainstorming, and they kept telling me ki, the joint secretary kept telling me ki isko nikal do, and I kept telling him ki sir, you don't want to give people the fish, you want them to learn how to fish it themselves. So incubators could be one of the way for, and they have to be a way for social economic development. So it took even at my end, I would say, to make sure that incubators stay there, right? And now, as you can see, the scope has been broadened. So the contribution to incubators or research and development projects, so it's now expanded to R&D as well. And again, now there is no restriction of them being under an academic institution or only, promoted by DST or any one of these agencies, but any of these agencies, anybody which is funded by, any central government or state government or PSU or any other agency of the central government or state government. So even if it is a state government recognized, it is, now it's stand up and start taking money. And incubator is, not only an implementation agency. You are an activity. You don't have to be 3 years old. Yes, you have to have the basic, which I'll just show you, but then you don't have to be at least 3 years old to start taking CSR money. You're a beneficiary directly. Whereas ISPA, for that matter, is an implementation agency. I mean, I'm sure you're registered as a society, so your role is different, but then incubator per se is an activity directly. So, and they can actually, write a check also to you. So, although that's not allowed under CSR, but they can do that. Okay. So, and then as you can see, 9.9 part B, they've also allowed, money to go to the public funded universities, the IITs, the laboratories, and then all these ministries, which are engaged in conducting research in science and technology and engineering and medicine, aimed at promoting sustainable development goals. And that's why I said, whenever you write proposals for corporate, please keep the SDGs at the back of your hand, because each of your project has to comply with some SDGs. It's going to be important when you write these projects. Let's also look at, the corporate engagement by incubators, and some of these, because I've done and I've seen, have worked. So I just thought I would bucket you. So, you can always organize reverse pitch events. So we had a couple of corporate who would actually, ask us for innovative projects, be it in, water and sanitation, be it in, integrated rural development. So, I really found that there are some of these corporate who are forthcoming, who want to actually talk about their future strategy of, investing in technologies. And that's where, incubators should invite them. So, I mean, we had conducted one with IIT Delhi. I think I had done this in 2016, and it was a great event. So, that's where I would also post for the sake of saying so. So, IIT Delhi started getting a lot of other engagements as well on CSR. Also, they would, you could develop projects and submit to the corporate, but most importantly, you have to have your presence felt, start talking to them, start engaging with them. So how many corporate actually visit your incubator? Do you have ways of inviting them over, showing them around? So that's what you could be doing. Very importantly, yes, meet the necessary compliance. I'll give you a slide on that as well. but then also, you know, showcase your startups, organize walking tours, meet and greet for corporate CSR committee members, right? And as I said, you know, the only thing you need to do is when you need to start looking at the CSR committee members and, you know, who are the people responsible for CSR, you have to just go to their website and see that. They have to disclose it. It's there on public domain. And then look at, you know, matchmaking with the corporate CSR policy. So one thing I can leave, you know, for all of you here is that most of these PSUs actually, you know, they take up the entire Schedule 7 as part of their, you know, CSR policy. And if you remember, you know, 3 years back, there was a thrust from the Prime Minister where, and also, you know, so they had instructed all the oil companies, oil and power companies to invest in startups. There was, you know, almost 300 crores which was available. So I was advising IIM Lucknow at that time, and, you know, we reached out to a lot of them actually. And although there were smaller engagements which started, so, you know, as simple as a due diligence engagement, but so what? I mean, the purpose should be, you know, to start engaging with them. And then, you know, maybe organize some tech demonstrations for the corporate. So, and most importantly, you know, so again, you know, I have developed this program for IIM Lucknow, which I think was the first program. So started calling it the Innovation Development Program. And that was the first program on corporate venturing. So, you know, between Professor Akbar, who was then chair at IIM Lucknow, and me, we had developed this interesting program. But then we thought, you know, this could be a puller for the corporate to come and start seeing the incubator and start seeing the facility and understand, you know, how can we engage with them. So we did start a couple of these innovation MDPs also. Let's look at the significant aspects of the amendments of 2021. So, you know, the implementation is, you know, very, very critical right now. And, you know, corporate have actually been clearly told about implementation. So not just, you know, how they place their policy or what do they do with their unspent money, but also, you know, there's a lot of thrust now on the CSR implementation, as well as, you know, a lot of thrust on monitoring and evaluation also, monitoring and assessment of the projects. And there is clear guidelines now on the impact assessment as well. So these are the various ways, you know, by which they can spend their CSR money. So, you know, now what happens with the implementation agency? And as I have been repeating, an incubator is actually an activity under Schedule 7. But at the same time, if you wish to be an implementation partner, because you all are, you know, mostly registered as a society or Section 8 company or a trust, you can absolutely also become an implementation agency, right? So you can also start taking their projects as IA, right? So what would you require to have? You would require in that case to have a CSR1 form, which is going to become mandatory from the 1st April 2021. And it's going to be on the MCA portal. So, you know, in case you wish to become an implementation agency, you know, you'll be awarded or allocated, you know, a unique CSR registration number, and you can absolutely quote it and take it on. You know, you can quote it in your proposals to the corporate. And ISBA can, of course, you know, be an implementation agency as well. Now, what happens to, you know, the funds? So where a company spends an amount in excess of requirement, such excess may be set off against the requirement to spend up to immediate succeeding 3 years, provided the excess amount available for set off shall not include the surplus arising out of the CSR activities. So, you know, this time amendments have very clearly told the corporate that if there is any surplus, you know, it cannot be sending, I mean, it cannot go back to the mainstream business. So, you know, if there is any surplus which comes out of the incubator process, the corporate does not have right on it. I'm telling this very clearly according to the law, you know, that money has to be, you know, plowed back to the incubator or to the project itself, to the CSR project itself. Also, they have clearly suggested that in case there is any unspent amount, so the company has to actually set up a separate account and the money will go there, So as I said, it's been a lot of compliance for the corporate this time. Sorry, that's a bad look and feel of the slide. Okay, but then there will be some assets which will be created, and especially I picked up this slide because I'm sure, a couple of you incubators will be creating assets. So the assets will actually remain with the incubator. It's very clear. It will not be a property of the corporate, right? So I think that ways corporate are actually very streamlined. When they invest in an incubator, it will be good, and that's something which you can actually boast of, that we are in any case a special purpose vehicle. So because you've been established as SPV under maybe an academic institution or outside or wherever. So as an SPV, you can actually continue to own the asset which has been created by the CSR funds. Okay, there's a catch now. This time, I think they have allowed all the international organizations. So, the UN, the UNDP, all these international organizations, if they are, registered under the central government, so, they can also start, designing, monitoring and evaluating CSR projects. So this could have been, something which even the incubators could have done. So this could have been an additional revenue stream for you. But you can still do that. I mean, you have to only go out and, make yourself available, as I keep saying. The CSR reporting has been made mandatory now, and then there are these annexures. Then there is an impact assessment which has to be done for projects, more than 1 crore, and that too through a third party. So in case you want to do even impact assessment, you can do that. That's also something you guys can take up. And the impact assessment report has to be placed before the board. Only a total of 5% of the total CSR or 50 lakh of whatever is less can be paid to this impact investment agency. But as I said, you can go out and do that if it interests you. Also, they have to display then all these activities on the website, which includes their impact assessment reports. So I would say this has restricted the work which Big Fours used to do, because now there's not as much money which is there in impact assessment. So I would say you guys, I mean, if you want to do some consulting, this is one way you could do that. Now, what are the mandatory requirements which you will be required for the due diligence, and in case you want to register yourself as an implementation agency, you'll require, of course, your registration certificate. You'll also require, certificate under Section 12A, audited accounts of last 3 years, IT exemption under 35, Section 35 if applicable, under 80G if applicable, which is for individual donations. I mean, we really do not know why this has been asked, but it has been asked, right? Then acknowledgement of income tax return along with IT return filed last 3 years. I'm sure you all are filing your returns. FCRA certificate, especially, if you've been receiving foreign grants, I'm sure you have the FCRA, your PAN card, and, your annual reports, and of course, the copy of constitution, aims and objectives of the organizations. These are some of the, other organizations and frameworks which you may like to know. These are some of the helpful websites you may like to look at if you have to, anytime look at CSR funds. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Divya. It was quite a comprehensive canvas of items that you have discussed. I think the very purpose of the CSR, the philosophy behind, intent behind, the history, and also the current amendments, I think you covered quite a wider ground. It was very, very informative. And I'm sure there are questions from the audience, but since we have Ms. Shubhangi Thakur's presentation, we will complete that and we'll take all the questions together. Hope that is okay for you.
Oh, absolutely, Dr. Bala. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shubhangi, would you like to?
Thank you, Dr. Bala, and thank you, Dr. Divya. That was very insightful, and it was great to hear someone of your stature. And I really hope in future, we can work together and we could, take your expertise to help us address and help various initiatives at Invest India as well. So going forward, I'll quickly share my screen. I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes, it's visible.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bala. So as Siddharth mentioned, Agni as a program actively engages with different corporates, with different partners across various sectors, and we also support technologies with the necessary de-risking support. So here are certain examples that we'd like to share today, and also at the same time talk about the recent engagements that we've had, and how incubators in all these engagements have played an extremely integral role to help us feed into these exercises. So first of all, there are two ways that we approach the technology demand engagement of ours. First is we do targeted technology scouting exercises for organizations like Reckitt Benckiser, UNDP, PNG, amongst various others, across the different problem statements that these corporates share with us. There are also these technology showcases that we've conducted with organizations like Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, the Common Service Centers, Mandeshi Foundation, amongst various others, which of course help us fast track the deployment process, and most importantly, engage with the stakeholders on the ground. Agni, of course, like Siddharth also mentioned before, works across different sectors. But one of the sectors that I'd like to talk about and give some brief about is the rural impact engagement that Agni has. So our team very actively works with FPOs, village level entrepreneurs and farmers, to understand their needs on the ground. And we do that through various surveys, field visits. We conduct expert interviews with the NGOs, the self-help groups, and the women entrepreneurs, and so on. And we've also done technology showcases for our partners, as mentioned, like the Mandeshi Foundation, the Digital Village Showcase, where we've utilized our incubator network and the portfolio of technologies that we have in Agni to help us address the problems at the ground level with more precision and ensure that there's maximum deployment on the ground through these foundations. And for the same, we use the network, such as the Common Service Centers, the Reliance Foundation, which is present in more than 10 districts across 12 states, and also foundations like the Mandeshi Foundation, which have a huge network of women entrepreneurs, and also the others like the Akshay Patra, BAIF, and Jivika Foundation. The other, very integral contribution and very integral collaboration that we did with incubators was during the COVID scaling effort of Agni, where we reached out to our network of incubators and we received, around 131 technologies across different, focus areas. And IIT Kanpur, Venture Center, IIM Calcutta Innovation Park, NKIIT, technology business incubators were one of the major contributors of these technologies. And like I mentioned before, our team also very actively looks at supporting these technologies by offering the necessary de-risking support. So during COVID, we supported these technologies through more than 100 manufacturing partnerships, helping them get licenses, helping them with their production capacity. 6 regulatory partnerships where we help them connect with organizations like the ICMR, CSIR, and helping them further connect with CITRA for necessary testing, and of course during the entire process, we've received constant support from the Office of Principal Scientific Advisor. And apart from that, most importantly, we also facilitated, 55 Agni funding partnerships where we collaborated with the ACT grants, the BIRAC and the DBT grants, amongst various others. While there are a lot of deployment that the entire team facilitated through smart cities and various government departments during COVID, one of them that I'd like to talk about is the MyLab Pune, where we connected the MyLab Pune with the ACT and the Technology Development Board for a cumulative funding of almost INR 4 crores. And also we helped them connect with the Indian Mission and help them source the scarcely available raw material from Singapore. Another recent engagement, which are like very recent, these are the ones that we did in January and February respectively. And we're really grateful to also get necessary support from the ISBA network, most importantly Delphina, who supported us with our outreach, specifically for the National Disaster Response Force. So we recently conducted a technology showcase for the NDRF at their headquarters in Delhi, where we showcased around 11 technologies. And also we supported NDRF's recent relief efforts in Uttarakhand, where we also took the support of ISBA network. And 4 technologies were deployed in Uttarakhand to further support NDRF for the relief efforts. And 3 were the technologies, considering there were a lot of environmental challenges. So 3 were the ones that were successfully, they successfully undertook the operations. Now the other engagement that's still ongoing is the Common Service Center, where the aim is to build more than 800 digital villages across 3.5 lakhs or more than 3.5 lakh CSC centers. So we actively engage with them as well, where we conduct or showcase every 7 to 10 days, where technologies, of course, directly get a chance to talk to the farmers, the village level entrepreneurs, and the CSC team very actively supports us through these efforts. And Agni's portfolio of technologies, like I said, every 7 to 10 days get a chance to showcase their technologies through these digital technology showcases that we have. And we also have one, in fact, today, where technologies from IIT Kanpur, KIIT are also presenting. So there, 4 technologies are from incubator of the total 5 that are presenting today. And we really hope that we can collaborate with ISBA's network of incubators, where we help address these issues on the ground level across these different partners with the right set of technology and precision, and make sure that technology is at the upfront of addressing issues at the ground level. So that was a brief about the kind of engagements that we've had in the past and how we engage with our ecosystem. I'd be more than happy to answer questions about certain engagements if anybody might have. The other thing that our team also, realized and we quite actively work on is research work. And we also have a dedicated research unit at the Invest India team. But these were the ones that we specifically did for CSR engagements of ours. And as Dr. Divya was highlighting, a lot of time there's ambiguity around why the corporates are not answering, or what is that specific step that they require necessary support in. So we tried addressing these issues, especially during the COVID time, where we conducted surveys with our corporate partners, where they told us, what the problem was and how they believe we could address it. And we've tried putting up insights from that on this report, which we'll be more than happy to share. And the other report is, a booklet which answers all, covers mostly all the questions around CSR contributions for technology incubators, where we partnered with a legal firm. Of course, we took support from their legal expertise and helped answering and, removing the information asymmetry that exists, and also giving them a brief insight about the processes that they could follow according to the amendments, and the ones that, also help them decode the various acts and amendments that have taken place in the past. On that note, and also, if there are any specific queries that anyone might have, you could first of all, know more about our program at www.agni.gov.in. And you could also reach out to us. So I've shared, Siddharth's email address and mine in case there are any specific questions regarding CSR. Of course, we try answering a lot of them today in the slot that we have, but in case you'd like to know more and connect about maybe certain technologies that you might have for various partners that we actively engage with, we'd be more than happy to, address those. And apart from that, I'd like to thank the ISBA team, most importantly, Dr. Suresh and Dr. Bala for, helping us build up this collaboration, and Delphina for her consistent support throughout in these engagements that we've had so far. And we also really hope that, we can actively engage with all the incubators and, help further in our collaborations that we have with different partners to, address their problem statements, and most importantly, ensure that technology is at the forefront to addressing these issues. On that note, thank you so much. And in case, Siddharth, you have any closing remarks, I'd be more than happy to,
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Shobhanki, for a detailed overview on this technology commercialization front also. I'm going to open for questions. Already there are a number of questions in the chat box, but before that, I have one specific question with you. Programs like COVID or this NDRF, so periodically you come back, to the community with some specific challenges and ask for referrals from startups. But other than that, if there is a startup comes and approaches any of the incubation manager at some stage of their technology development, so would it be possible at a one-to-one level to facilitate some exposure to corporates or the potential customers? If so, what is a technology readiness level you look at for the company to be approachable? Is the question clear?
Yes, definitely, Dr. Bala. So while we do have these challenge areas open quite so often, every week we have a couple of them open where startups do apply. The Agni portal is a pathway for individual startups to reach out to us. And then we are able to facilitate them on a case-to-case basis. We do try to avoid one-to-one because it takes a lot of bandwidth. But if there is a specific case sometimes where it makes sense, we will take it up. Apart from that, we have 10 different case groups that look at various sectors, groups of sectors. So for instance, rural impact is one, there'll be education one, there'll be security. So there's always some engagement happening where a particular startup could be provided help. So it is open. We don't do a lot of it because of bandwidth constraints, but wherever possible, via the Agni portal, it's a channel that startups can explore.
Okay. So I'm sure the same methodology applies for funding facilitation as well, right?
Okay. Exactly. So usually what we try to do is try to create and convene networks. So suppose we will look at a lot of startups coming in from the social impact sector or the education sector. We take those and we try to get enough VCs interested to do a pitching session, to do a mentorship session or whatever else. So we try to take groups of startups at one point just for economy of time and resources.
Okay. Thank you. So we have about 10 plus minutes in view of time. So I'm going to read some of the questions. So among three, any one of you could pick and answer that. But we'll go in a rapid fire format so that if we are left with some more time, then we can open up to the audience. So the first one, Dr. Saket from Indigo Labs is asking if there is a database of CSR doing companies that funded incubators in the past.
So in terms of just from the Invest India perspective, we do engage with a lot of corporates who expressed interest. We also have a few who have actually funded in the past. There's no consolidated database with us, but if the incubators would like to get involved, or if they have any specific corporate that they want to engage with, we could possibly look at making those connections. That's our perspective. I don't know if Dr. Divya has any others.
Yeah. Dr. Divya, would you like to?
Right. So yes, you can have a look at the mca.gov.in. So they do list out a number of things, but then it's not consolidated at one place, right? So maybe, I mean, if it is very important, maybe we can work with ISBA to do that.
Great, thanks. So Rashmi from Sign is asking, what's the time period to utilize the CSR funds received by an incubator, applicable from which date?
So, as per the amendments now, they have put a deadline of 3 years to complete any CSR project. So I'm sure the same would apply to incubator projects, because the money will come under a project mode. It is actually one year, which is, the year of award plus 3 years. So typically, if you could, now that we have the financial year closing, if you are ready and you could, set it off, that's a good time, I think, to take off.
Yeah. So the next one is from Nitin Makwan. We have established our own Section 8 company with the main object of incubation. How would we proceed to use our own CSR funds? So this question is slightly not clear, but what I understand is they are backed by some corporate, and if they can use for their own internal CSR deployment. If my understanding is right, this is what I am understanding from the person.
Right. So, CSR money or CSR funds from a corporate could be used, again, in a project mode. So you can develop a project. It could be, one of the other thematic areas in Schedule 7 as well. So maybe you'd like to do a specialized cohort, say, for women entrepreneurs or for social, maybe around WASH or maybe around medicine. So if you can actually, combine it with the SDGs and combine it with Schedule 7, other thematic areas, that's more likelihood of, you getting a CSR fund or you being able to, deploy your CSR funding to better use.
So then there's a question from Renu. Thanks for the session. With the world moving online post-pandemic, will the online incubators have the same status? So,
Siddharth or Shubhangi, yeah, I think Invest India would.
So like you mentioned, we've been seeing a lot of online incubators and programs that are focusing on startups. Definitely, I think there is value in it. How it interacts with CSR, we are not quite clear because it just says incubators, right? It doesn't say physical or virtual. So I think it'll be open to all incubators, unless Dr. Rajput has any other insights on that aspect, whether CSR would be affected by this.
I think as long as the CSR committee of the company is comfortable, it's fine, right? Right. So I think again, Rashmi says thanks, Dr. Divya, for the detailed insights. So please share your presentation. You have agreed to share it with ISBA. We will share it. And Jinal Shah, can we contribute to the corpus fund of our own foundation to comply with the CSR contribution for the financial year 2021 after amendments? So
yes,
similar question.
Yeah, yes, you can. You can put money to your own foundation if you're a corporate, and also, but then it has to be, in a project mode. So it has to have a baseline survey. It has to have, all the components of a project. So you have to make it in a project mode. You can absolutely utilize it for any development project listed under Schedule 7.
The next one is from Dr. Chandramouli from AIC Sri Krishnadevara University. Thanks for the wonderful session and insights. Being an incubator with Section 8 company status, what are the essential prerequisites to tap CSR funds?
So I had given a list of, documents, and we'll share the presentation that carries, the basics, and most of them are, related to your compliance in income tax, I would say, because they would like to see, if the money is going in right hands. So, I mean, and see, that's why I strongly feel, because incubators are a great institutional mechanism. So right. These basics should not hurt you in any case. I mean, I am sure you all are sorted there. So please, I mean, it's mostly about, you making yourself visible and now that ISBA is taking charge and then Invest India is supporting, I see this being great promising, adding to the development, as I keep saying,
Thank you. And Nitin has sent me a direct follow-up question. So what he says is, we have established Section 8 promoted by our company, Nesco Limited. Is it not funded by, it is not funded by government, but recognized by government on their portal too. Can we spend our own CSR for this newly established incubator? I'll be happy to get your email number.
Yes, you can. If you are recognized by any of these government agencies or government bodies, you can pick up CSR funds. I mean, you don't need external government funding only. You have to actually have the recognition. Yes, you can.
Renu, again, she has spoken about Shakti. The Empathy Project is an incubation program for women entrepreneurs doing social impact work, both take and not take. How can we partner? She has shared her email. Probably we will share your presentation contains contact details of all three of you. So I would request anyone wanting to reach out on a one-to-one basis, they can directly get in touch. And the next one is another message to me. What are the funding opportunities for startups engaged in pharmaceutical research? What's the minimum TRL required? So, Invest India team.
Sure. Depends on what kind of funding channels you're looking at. So if you answer the TRL question first, Agni does work with sort of prototype stage and above. We try to avoid stages below that just because it's a little harder. It's a little more applied sciences at that point, basic and applied. We try to focus on product stage. However, BIRAC and a lot of these different government programs have dedicated funding channels for various levels of TRL, startups and technologies. And I'd probably encourage you to have a look at that. And specifically, we do have a pharmaceutical practice at Agni as well. And we work with corporates over there for deployment opportunities, for seed funding and all of that. So that is something that you could explore if there's startup interest.
And from Jinserv, Bharat Chandra, so he wants a negative list of corporates who are not spending as per the prescribed amount so that he can target. So would that be possible to get that list?
So we'll have to compile it, Dr. Bala. So yes,
ISBA will reach out to you separately. I
will work with my partner and we'll do that.
Right. So Kannan from Kongu. So Siddharth said a report recently published. Can we have a link to it? So.
Yeah, definitely. It's on the Invest India website. Maybe we'll put the link on the chat window so everybody can access.
Okay. Ritika from Ritika Marampalli. Can CSR funds be used to create building and facilities for incubation?
Yes.
Yeah. When you said blank check can be, you can say the check can be given. It could be for anything.
Yes. Incubators don't know their power in this. Yes. They can receive money both as an activity as well as an implementation agency. Yes.
Yeah. So again, AIC SKU, thank you, Dr. Divya. Next one is Dr. Manisha Indigram. How easy to get 12A and 80G as incubators are taking equity share from startups? So I also have one follow-up question on this. I understand income tax exemption is one, 80G is slightly different. Is it either or it should be both, or how is it? Or without both also we can get?
Right. So, Dr. Bala, even we are surprised this time they have said for both. In fact, according to me personally, both should not have been required. 12A because, so that there's no taxation on it would have been sufficient. But somehow they have, asked about, and I know incubators don't take individual donations. Right. So could be a little tricky, but I mean, compliance. Maybe what could be done is a representation could be sent from ISBA, maybe Invest India could support. So Invest India team, they listen to you, trust me. So, you can actually send out this representation because amendment could happen anytime, So,
Divya, one official request from ISBA. Would you help us to do that so that we can send a representation through Invest India, and Invest India also would watch that. And because this is one important piece, I think
it is going
needs
to be important.
urgently addressed. So
it is going to be important, I understand. And in fact, even there are some gray areas even with 12A and ATG nowadays. So, that requires to be renewed. So there are some of these gray areas which are there on the compliance front parallelly happening. So
we will bat for removal of both, but at least if one either or comes, it's
no, I think having 12A is good, Dr. Bala. So you really don't. I mean, like Dr. Manisha said, if you're able to encash your equity someday,
right?
Your startup becomes big, and you want to encash that equity, you really don't want to pay taxes on that.
Right.
So I think it will be good to even receive a 12A.
Right. And Krishnan from SEBI, what will be the typical time slot in a financial year for pitching CSR funds? I think March is when everybody gets active, right?
Right. Yes. So, typically their board meetings happen in the month of April and May. Right. So, it's good if you can reach out to them before and make yourself available.
Okay. So, I think we are exceeding time. One last question. As an incubator operating under a not-for-profit trust, can we keep equity of the startup?
Absolutely. That's one way of you being self-sustaining. Please go ahead, do that.
Okay. So I'm sure the questions are not over it, and the sessions and engagement with you also is not over it. So we will keep calling you and troubling you all three. And Invest India is our partner, and Divya is going to be our partner in crime or whatever it is, in lobbying in all the corridors. So it was a wonderful session. As it was seen in the chat box, there's an overwhelming response. And so thank you all for this invigorating session. And we look forward to having more such sessions in the future.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Bala, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Invest India team. I think that was very insightful. And so good to see you guys doing some very great work. So keep it up.